All right, guys, welcome back to Jiu Jitsu Motivation. My name's Greg Melita, owner of Hampton's Jiu Jitsu, black belt, second degree.
And I'm Brian DeLuca, black belt and author of Jiu Jitsu for Small People and other weird shit I think about.
Today we got an awesome guy on, Garry Tonon. Gary loves that title, by the way.
Yeah.
Garry Tonon, welcome to the show, man. Been a real big inspiration for me. We've actually, known each other for a long time. Had a couple of matches together at brown belt, and just has seen you come through the ranks and seeing your evolution of your game and the way you approach training, all of those things. Not only an inspiration to us at my academy, but the way that I like to teach. So really appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely, dude.
So what's going on, man? We got a lot of news, and you know how social media is. You don't know what to believe. You got all these pages making funny shit and saying different things. So why don't we hear it from you? You guys going to Austin, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I kept people in the dark. I just kept posting my my booty photos on my stories. I really I don't think I really said much about what's been going on. I don't really intend to say too much. I think we just kind of all collectively decided that we're just going to, amicably, do this thing and split and kind of just go our separate ways and have it not be like some kind of crazy dramatic fucking thing, where we're screaming at each other or throwing things each other's way or anything like that. So, yeah, man, I mean, there's not too much to say. It's just, some differences in opinions and disagreements and things. And some people felt they needed to go a different direction, and that's what they're doing. And, I mean, it's part of life. It's a sad thing, to see people that, you spent a lot of time with and that you have good relationships and stuff like that, go a different direction, and they're no longer a part of your day-to-day life. You know what I mean? I do care about all of those guys. And, I knew them for many, many years. So it's not like there's nothing, at least for me, maybe for other people, they feel differently, whether they comment on it or not. But at least for me, like, I'm still pretty much friends with everybody. It's all very it's just more of a, choice for where they want to go in their life moving forward, which, it is what it is, man. So as far as for me and what I'm doing, we're going to be, me, John, and Gordon are going to be working on opening a school somewhere in Austin, I believe. I think in the meantime, we'll probably be housed at a different gym, just kind of doing our training and stuff. And then we're going to work on finding a commercial place to kind of open up. I think Gordon already announced that. I don't know. I don't keep up with any of it, to be honest. I've been worried about my own stuff personally. I'm just worried about, getting back in there and fighting and, and having a good result when it comes to that. So, I'm excited in the sense that, number one, I'll be back in the continental United States, where you can order food and it doesn't take 3.5 hours. And there aren't all kinds of crazy hoops that you have to jump through to get things like a mattress in your house, which is what I had to deal with. That's a whole other story. So I'm excited about that. I'm also excited about probably, getting some training in a cage moving forward, because I haven't had that out in Puerto Rico. There's a couple places that have them, but it's kind of smaller. So I haven't really got the cage training that I normally like. I know some people have different opinions about that. I know some guys that do MMA that never step into the cage until they actually fight, which I actually find insane personally. I remember I was talking to Mighty Mouse, and he was like, "Yeah, we don't have a cage at our gym." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, no, we don't do any cage training." I'm like, how? Like, what do you mean? Like, you fight in a cage, dude. Like, you never thought it would be valuable for you to practice in the place you're actually going to fight? Like, that's mind-boggling to me. I mean, obviously he's been very successful throughout his career, so far be it for me to say anything in dissension of that, but it's crazy. So for me, it's a big deal for me to have a cage again and be able to train, and also just probably being in Texas, I'll probably be able to pull for more, I'll probably be able to get more MMA training partners. It was a little hard to get sparring partners when I was in Puerto Rico. You have to import everybody. I keep a pretty close knit group to begin with, but it'll be nice to get some variety in training and stuff like that. So, I'm looking forward to it. I hate fucking moving, to be honest. It's an awful process, and I've had to do it quite a bit with both my personal gym that I own in New Jersey, which is called Garry Tonon Jiu Jitsu now, as well as my own home multiple times and to different countries, over the past, couple of years. So it's been an interesting trip. A lot of movement.
That's an interesting point, though. I don't think a lot of people, appreciate that being, two main decisions in you guys going that route. And that, everybody's thinking, obviously, the move to Texas is, pretty obvious as far as like COVID. And this is, Texas and Florida being the most active jiu-jitsu states, if you will. And you guys, go to Texas a lot. That was a no-brainer. But the MMA aspect for you and the cage aspect, I don't think a lot of people really understood that or even knew about that.
Well, sure. I mean, in theory, we could have opened a school in Puerto Rico and built a cage, right? It's not like we couldn't have done that there. But we ran into similar troubles that we ran into in life in trying to open a business in Puerto Rico also. Right. So it, ultimately just decided that was going to be something that wasn't, it was going to make more sense to open elsewhere, so we thought we were going to, it was going to be something that could be done in a timely manner and all these things. And it didn't really work out that way. So I think we're going to have a little bit more success out west, if you will.
Did you guys release the name of the school?
I don't know if they released it or not. I don't really know if it's supposed to be a secret or not. So I'm not going to say anything because I do know what it's. I do know. You gotta get a place too.
Still, you gotta get a place right?
There's still not even a place, but I know Gordon was talking about doing trademarking and stuff like that today. So the last thing I want to do is like say something I'm not supposed to. I'm pretty sure it should already be known, but who the hell knows? I don't know. I'm not gonna be the one that screws the pooch on this one though. So there is a name, but I'm not saying it here. So do some research. Look on.
Plead the Fifth Amendment. Plead the Fifth Amendment. Yeah, or check Gordon's Instagram, and then you'll find it. Maybe
he's much more vocal about things. Well, I shouldn't say that. I'm pretty vocal about certain things too. But
oh, you definitely are, man. Come on.
So okay. So quick question: is this just going to be? Are you guys in Austin just jiu-jitsu or jiu-jitsu and MMA?
Oh, in terms of teaching?
Yeah.
In terms of teaching, I would say that the school will probably primarily be jiu-jitsu. I mean, John does all the sessions with, like, he's my MMA coach. Like, there's no boxing coach, there's no kickboxing coach. It's just me and John really, and a couple other training partners that work with us. So I would imagine we probably continue to keep that kind of small. So like, it depends on who shows up and who's interested. I don't think John will be planning on teaching like MMA classes. Right. You know what I mean? I think it'll have a lot more to do with like, hey, if we got some guys that come in that are around my size that have some fucking sparring experience or something, and they want to join in the fun and in quotes for sure, then yeah, I guess I guess there'll be some room for people to get involved. I don't know if John is really interested in starting up an entire MMA program though. It's really hard to say moving forward. You never really. That guy is he's an enigma for sure. I could never really pin him completely down. So maybe I'm dead wrong, and that's part of the plan. But so far as I know, it's going to be primarily jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, so let's start with that. Let's go back into, we're talking about jiu-jitsu. I think my camera's fucking up here. But we're talking about jiu-jitsu, and I mean, really your upbringing. I mean, when I started him, to heavy into the competing and coming up through the ranks. Can you start like how you started and your journey to the DDS, if you will, as far as your training goes and competition?
Sure. So I started doing jiu-jitsu under Tom DeBlass. He was in my town and it was very close to me. It was very easy and accessible. A friend of mine told me that he had opened, so I think he was in one location for a little bit, and then I missed him at that one, and eventually showed up at his second, and I guess it was his final location, because I'm pretty sure he basically just took that location and expanded and got bigger and bigger and took like more storefronts in that area. But I basically was under Tom, being taught by him directly for basically maybe like 5-6 years, something like that. And then I went to college well, sorry, I went to community college while I was with him too. So like basically 15 years old to like somewhere around like 20-ish, I was under Tom. And then, what was I going to say? When I went to college, I was kind of bouncing around everywhere. I was training. And that's how, you know, I kind of got my foray into training in New York and training under John. But I was training everywhere. I would train at Ricardo's some days, Ricardo Almeida's spot, and work with their guys. I would train with some other Henzo affiliates. I think they had one in Homedale at the time, and I think maybe it's somewhere else now, but Middletown maybe. But they would have practices on Fridays, so I would go there on Fridays, and then I think, you know, occasionally I would try to pop into the city and grab classes. I know that Frankie Edgar was at the time was doing some classes with John on Monday mornings. I was kind of like pro training back in the day, like everybody that was like a professional UFC fighter, or I mean, I don't even know if it was really jiu-jitsu. I mean, it was a jiu-jitsu class, don't get me wrong, but like the guys, the big boys that showed up were guys that basically were professional fighters. So it was pretty much jiu-jitsu geared for the purposes of these guys that were going to be having MMA fights. Okay. I would say, you know, like they were the primary focus in the room. You know, when John has a trickle down method of teaching, and I agree with it, especially when you're talking about trying to produce high level athletes, and that is you're pretty much teaching to the best person in the room, or the person of most relevance. Hold on one second, sorry. So you're pretty much teaching to the person that has the most skill in the room, or whatever the case may be, or I guess the project that you're working on, or whatever the case may be, which would have been George at the time, or Weidman, or Frankie, Edgar. Depends on, you know, who happened to be in the room that day. But I'm sure that the classes were geared towards those individuals. You know what I mean? The rest of us that were there, I mean, yeah, I was an avid jiu-jitsu competitor and everything like that. But honestly, like at that stage of the game, like one of the things that people have to understand is like jiu-jitsu competition really didn't mean a whole lot, to be honest. Like it really, it really was like, it's kind of like a game. Like, I mean, it was amateur level competition. Nobody really got paid. I mean, ADCC existed, but even ADCC, let's say you're the absolute best in the world, no gi back then, right? So we're talking like 2000, what? I don't know. Like I graduated college in 2013. So maybe the era I'm referring to right now is in like 2011 or something like that. So like, let's say like somewhere around 2011, like, okay, you're the best in the world. You win absolute division in ADCC. All right. That happens once every 2 years, and you just won yourself $40,000. That's not a lot to live on for 2 years, man. You know, even if you're just by yourself. So
it's not even paying for your training for the 2 years.
Yeah, like let's get realistic. So anybody making money in jiu-jitsu, they just had a school and they had students. Like you either did that, or you were just kind of like a vagrant like me, who just, you know, I went to college and stuff, and like I bounced around and like tried to make money where I could, and spent it all on training, and basically had no money in my bank account every month. And that's what you did. You just basically spent all of your money on training and survived on scraps. I was eating peanut butter sandwiches like for most of my meals, and fast food and all these. Well, not that I don't eat fast food today, but all of these things to just kind of scrape by and survive so that I could continue to do my training. And then at some point, I eventually, started working in a school. I was teaching, and then, you know, owned a school and all these things. And that was the goal, to try to make money. The idea of competing professionally to make money, it wasn't even on the table. So like that jiu-jitsu class that we were doing on a Monday afternoon with all of these professional fighters in it, like even if there was somebody in there that was like one of the greatest grapplers ever, like it didn't matter. Like the class is not going to be catered to you because it didn't even matter that much. Like we're talking about George St. Pierre, who's going to be fighting for a world title, or Frankie Edgar, who's going to be fighting for a world title, or Chris Weidman, who's going to be fighting for a world title. It's like those things mean something, you know what I mean? So anyway, that was kind of the way that the room was catered. So I was just trying to survive in this room with monsters. And I met John, and I was introduced to him, and I was learning from him. But I don't know if I really understood how the meaning of that yet. I recognized that he was a good teacher. It was quite clear, you know, that he could communicate ideas better than most people, and had a little bit of a different idea about things. But, you know, the philosophy and the types of things that John communicates to you over time, it's not learned in a day.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, I was only going there maybe once a week, so I don't know if I recognized that this person that I was in contact with had was going to have the dramatic impact on jiu-jitsu that perhaps, he did. You know what I mean? I didn't, I should say dramatic impact on myself and jiu-jitsu as he was going to. I didn't know about all of that yet. I really didn't know him that well. I hadn't spoken to him that often. I wasn't even a person in the class that he gave any attention to, really. I mean, it took to get a word from John in terms of a sentence that involved me. It probably was, months before he even addressed me as like a human being. And then years before, or at least a year before, we would have real conversations together. Where he was like, hey, Gary, George is getting ready for Nick Diaz. And I think your scrambly style is similar to Nick Diaz. So why don't you come up to Montreal and train with him? That was the most serious conversation that I had. That was the first time I had a full conversation with John, was, hey, you're going to come up to Montreal and train with George. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I guess. Great. So then I had that experience. I got a little closer to him, spoke to him a little bit more. Eventually met Eddie Cummings. Eddie Cummings was going to the more jiu-jitsu geared classes that John was teaching because the morning classes in Renzo Gracie Academy is basically, that's only people that were interested in jiu-jitsu. John was teaching just no-gi in those classes at the time. So Eddie's like, hey man, he was getting ready for an ADCC trials as I was at the time. He's like, you should come to these classes. I didn't even know they existed. I didn't know John taught them. All I saw was a class that started at 7:30 a.m. in New York City, and I live in New Jersey. And I was like, yeah, I'm never going to that class. That sounds awful. Why would I
getting
there?
up at 5:30 in the morning to commute in?
But at that time, I had developed this relationship with John, and I started to understand there's something special here. I started to understand if I continue training under this person, big good things are going to happen. There's going to be dramatic changes in my jiu-jitsu at that time. So I was like, oh, hell yeah, I'll drive 2 hours in traffic in the morning to get to New York to train under this guy at 7:30 in the morning while I can barely function as a human being, because it's worth it. It's worth every second. That's kind of how it ended up working out, man. And then I was just there every day. And then I brought Gordon, and then I brought Nikki, and these guys got into it too, and they recognized the same things that I recognize, and the team started to build from there.
You see, that's what I think a lot of people don't realize. You talked about owning a school, and that's even one thing that people don't even know. They think, oh yeah, you own a school, open up and throw some mats down and start teaching. They have no idea what it takes if you're a one-man show to run a school. But I think in addition to that, people don't realize that the classes that you were taking and started taking with John are way, way different than what people know of being classes for general jiu-jitsu people or, hobbyists.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't think they realize the difference. It is a world of difference. Because I know coming up, oh yeah, but not even the level, just the, like Gary was saying, the attention and what they're actually working on. I remember coming up for years, the format was just warm up. We're showing the technique of the day. You're not allowed to do any other technique other than what I show. And then it's basically just beat the shit out of each other for 4 or 5 rounds. And that's it. That's what I did for years coming through the ranks. But seeing not only the whole leg lock game is what I think is the big turn, but the method of teaching. I think people don't even get how much different that is. Can you go into that a little bit? Because obviously I think, people have no idea what it takes to run a school, but then follow that up with what everybody, including myself, knew of a jiu-jitsu class was just, okay, do a long drawn out warm up. There's a technique by the professor, and then just it's a tournament, and there's no focus on bad positions or anything like that.
Yeah. Sorry, you wanted me to elaborate a little bit on what the differences is in the training room?
Yeah. So people think Danaher's class versus a normal hobbyist class.
Sure. Yeah. So, something interesting happened with John's position. And I talk about this a lot, and we talk about this amongst ourselves a lot, as a team. And I just, it's worth mentioning. is John was in a very special position that most people that teach jiu-jitsu are not in that his only responsibility was to teach. His primary source of income was teaching privates most of the day. So like, I don't know what he was getting for like teaching classes or whatever the case may be, but I don't think it was pretty much what he was living off of. He was living off of, hey, I'm going to teach I'm going to teach every time I'm not teaching a class, I'm going to be teaching a private from 6 a.m. till, you know, I don't know when John leaves. God knows, probably sleeps in the ceiling or something. But, you know, till, let's say 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. or something like that. You know what I mean? During whatever that period of time is, I'm just going to crank out as many privates as I possibly can. And, you know, then, you know, I'll go home and that's how I'm going to make my money to survive. So his basic job was, I'm going to teach these privates to people and I'm going to teach XYZ classes to people. And that's how I'm choosing to make my living and how I'm going to, those are the things that I am responsible for in life. Now, most people that teach jiu-jitsu, that is not the case. A couple different things are different for most people. Most people have their own school, first of all, okay, which there's more to that than just teaching jiu-jitsu. And this is something that you mentioned, like you're a business owner now. There's a million fucking responsibilities that you have to tackle, whether it's paying bills, whether it's talking to some disgruntled student. Like John could literally, if you were a disgruntled student and you came to John, if John wanted to, he could just tell you to fuck off. Like it doesn't.
Right.
He's not the business owner. He's not making any money whether you're there or not. It makes no difference to him whether you're there or not, right? So that's a special spot to be in. When you're running a school, it's completely different. There's so much other things to do, and what often happens is, you know, you're going a bunch of different directions, and you couldn't possibly put all of your energy into just teaching. It's just a very difficult thing to do. You have your responsibilities and energy and time are split in so many other places. And in addition to that, what do most people do? They make the mistake of getting married and having a family. And no, they get married and they have a family, right? So now they have not only the responsibilities of running a business, but the responsibility of taking care of children, or, you know, they have some level of responsibility to their wife or whatever the case may be, and some life that they have on the outside. Again, something that John did not have. Like, you know, John has family members and things like that, but he doesn't have kids, he doesn't have a wife, etc. So there's nothing like stopping John from when he gets home after doing his privates all day, from sitting in front of a computer screen and analyzing tape from wrestling footage from the 80s until he falls asleep. Like, nobody's going to yell at him. There's nobody. He can do literally whatever he wants every day of the week. In regards to teaching, in regards to studying, in regards whatever, like basically he gets to do whatever the hell he wants. And that creates a recipe for, like, if you are an incredibly driven and motivated person and you have this objective that is to be a very, very good coach, or one of the best coaches ever, and you have the ambition of changing a sport or changing, you know, an athlete's career or whatever the case may be, you all of a sudden are much more in the driver's seat than if you were a person that had their responsibilities split so many different ways. And I think that is a piece of what allowed this kind of recipe for success to exist, you know? So that's kind of, anyway, sorry, that was a prelude to the answer to your question. I apologize because I didn't really answer your question, did I? So what I'll say now is that even now, the training environment and the things that we do in training are different from when I first started training with John. We've grown over the years. Like John kind of like, he adds things in or subtracts them based off of what he feels is necessary or what he feels is productive. He often does little studies and things and surveys. He'll look across the room. All right, this is working, this is not, etc. When we first started, it was, first of all, there's never been a warm-up ever. That never existed for as far as John was concerned. Whereas in the typical jiu-jitsu school, it's kind of like a necessary thing. Like I have warm-ups at my school. For my advanced and intermediate classes, I don't think I do, but for basic class, for sure. Because it's like something that kind of gets everybody together doing the same thing. It aligns everybody. It kind of keeps everybody focused and a little bit more disciplined and like, it's something that I think is kind of important, especially for somebody who's just starting, right? But yeah, none of that existed ever. If you were to warm up, just you show up early enough to warm up. That's your warm up, or your drilling is your warm up, whatever the case may be. Kind of you're responsible for your own body is kind of the gist of it, right? Then we would learn for however the hell long John decided he wanted to teach. That's the other aspect of this too. Like most people are working on a schedule. Like John had to teach a class at a particular time. I don't know if anybody forced him to end at any particular time. Sometimes class would take 2 hours. Sometimes class would take 30 minutes. It probably depended mostly on John's mood that day. That would be my guess. Based on the way that I've seen things over the years. But yeah, so like, I mean, however much time or how many moves he wanted to show or whatever he wanted to dedicate to that day's training session, he dedicated. In the early days, we did a couple stand-up techniques, and then we did some ground techniques. And then we would do our live training, and live training wasn't audited in any way, shape, or form. So you just did 5 rounds, I think, of 6 minutes, and that was the deal. And like, there were so many goddamn people on the mats in those Monday afternoon classes, and it was so sweaty that people. I think at the time Henzo's didn't have air conditioning, so or it wasn't working very well. Let's put it that way. So it was my responsibility, as well as 4 other people with towels, to run across the mat with towels in between rounds in this coned off area where all the professionals were training to make sure that the mats were dry. So that happened. And then, things grew. And like I had mentioned, like the focus used to just be on these guys that were fighting. But as professional jiu-jitsu grew, and as that started to become a real thing, and like all of us were, trying to make a career and money and gaining notoriety and all these things from competing in professional jiu-jitsu, I think it made John go, oh, okay, there's something here. This is worth pursuing. This is worth making sure that, these guys are the best in the world at this thing. It's not just like a game anymore. Like this is becoming something. It is growing. It is going to be something one day. These guys that are in this room are going to be something one day. So there started to be more attention to the jiu-jitsu in the room. It started to become a situation where all John's afternoon classes, with the exception of Monday, were in the gi. And slowly we made it so that he would teach in the gi and teach no gi to us. So it became a situation where it's very clear, he's giving us some level of special attention because, we're showing up and we're not even wearing the uniform that we're supposed to in class. Right. So that happened. The positional training kind of started to come into play a little bit later. I would say the first time we started to do more positional training was when the EBI stuff started to crank out, because we would have these things like armbar rounds and back rounds and stuff that became very prevalent in the EBI scene. Because, if you went to overtime, you would have to be on somebody's back. Somebody would have to be on your back, or potentially an armbar. So that was like the first introduction, I think, to, hey, we got to add some positional training in. And as we started to experiment it with that, we started to realize, like, me personally, I feel like I take a high degree of responsibility in getting good at like all the positions, like even bad ones. Like I let people mount me in training and shit. I let people put me in bad spots. But the reality is most people don't do that. And it's not even really necessarily their fault all the time. It's just like a mentality thing. Some people are hyper competitive. For example, Eddie's so hyper competitive. I don't know if he still is to this day, but I doubt he's changed. There's no chance he's letting you mount him in training. That's not fucking happening. He would never let that happen. Eddie wouldn't let you have a fucking inch. Okay. Are you kidding me? Mount? Absolutely not. So what we started to realize is that was a valuable addition to the whole room, starting in different positions, because some people in the room were so hyper competitive that they would never be in those positions and never practice them. So when we got to regular competition, people weren't ready. They weren't ready for those bad positions, and bad things would result. So we realized that was important. And then kind of as we moved along, we started paying more attention to the standing position. I would say over the past year or two, we've paid a lot more attention to that. And you've seen a lot of our athletes do a hell of a lot better in the standing position. We started basically making class half standing position, half ground. And there's like a distinct cutoff between the two. And John's been spending a lot more time in the standing position. So that's been added to our training. And we even, for a period of time, we're adding wrestling scrimmage rounds in. And I think we still do when as like ADCC and events like that get closer. So, man, the training room is so dynamic. It's changed a lot over the years. And it really had depended upon the needs of the group, but also kind of like the rule sets that we were competing in. And also, you know, maybe if John saw some deficiencies and things. So man, it's hard to pin down to tell you like what I think is exactly the recipe for success in terms of the training environment. I think that the big key for us was innovating over time. I think that had we stayed the same from the beginning and stuck to whatever formula we had, it wouldn't have benefited us in the future. So yeah, man, it's been a hell of a time, man. We've gone through a lot.
Well, I think one of the things that's important that you brought out is it's always evolving, right? It's always evolving based on the situation that's there, whether, like you said, it's a new rule set, whether it's, you know, different types of tournaments you're training for, whatever it is, just deficiencies. If it's not evolving, it's going to become, you know, stagnant. So that becomes really important.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up, and I just brought it up on my phone here. I use this a lot in my academy, and this is a quote. I think it's a direct quote from you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it says, in an average 5-round training session, I will get submitted 15 times. Take that information and ask yourself if you really have no ego.
Yeah, I remember pushing that.
Yeah, can you explain that a little bit? Because I say that to everybody. I'm like, you have to force yourself to, you know, in a full resisting training environment, actually rolling, like get yourself in bad positions. Because I did, like I said before, coming up through the ranks, it was just a tournament every day, just beating the crap out of each other to the point where maybe I didn't get get mounted in 2 years. And then you get mounted and you feel like a freaking white belt and you can't escape. So can you go into that quote a little bit? Because that hit me. That hit me really good when I heard it.
So I don't know if that average is perfect. I mean, maybe there's probably some training sessions where I get submitted less than that. Maybe some where I get submitted more. It really depends on who I train with. But the idea behind it is that I've been hearing this shit, and everybody's been hearing this shit since at least if they've been in jiu-jitsu as long as I have. I mean, I've been doing this now about 15 years. We're getting close to 15 years. If you've been doing as long as I had or longer, you've heard somebody lecture you at some point in time about having an ego on the mats, okay? And half the time, that somebody that was lecturing you about having an ego on the mats often has the largest ego out of anybody in the room. And, you know, I think that people get a little over obsessed with the word ego and the idea that you want to rid yourself of it. I mean, I think that idea is silly, especially if you have any intention of being a competitor. All of us have some ego. And I'll tell you why I can prove that we all have some ego and will continue to have some ego, because we train jiu-jitsu. We wouldn't train jiu-jitsu if we didn't have an ego, because we wouldn't give a shit that people could beat us up. We wouldn't care. It wouldn't matter to you. It wouldn't matter to you that you could walk by somebody on the street and they could take your lunch money and you couldn't do anything about it because you have no ego. You don't care, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. No big deal. But you did care. You wanted that power. You wanted that level of control. So you went into a jiu-jitsu academy and you said, you know what, fuck this. I want to have some control over my goddamn destiny here. I want to learn some jiu-jitsu. I want to learn how to defend myself, right? And that's what people said. And then some crazier people than those people, after they got to the jiu-jitsu academy and after they started training, they went, you know what? Just being able to defend myself on the street, that's not enough for me. My ego is actually a little bigger than that. I actually want to make sure that I could beat everyone up in this room. Like, I want to make sure that there's not a single person in this room that can submit me. Okay? And then you got a few people that went a little crazier than that, and they went, you know what? Not only do I want to be able to beat up everybody in this room, I don't want there to be a single person in this world in my weight class that can touch me. And so I'm going to compete in world championships and I'm going to win, right? And that's the farther you take this sport, the bigger the ego you have. I mean, it's impossible to argue against that. I mean, maybe somebody would try, but they'd be wrong, in my opinion. And maybe that's my big ego talk. But nonetheless, I think it's very true. So now what do we do with that information, right? As competitors, knowing that we have these large egos, right? And it's an inevitable thing because we want to compete. We want to do better. We want to beat other people, right? What do we do with that? Well, we have to keep it in check is, I think, the more important part of this process, right? In order to keep that ego in check, or quote unquote, and I kind of hate using this word too, keeping yourself humble per se, because I think humble and humility are often misused and misconstrued as these amazing things to possess. I don't actually think that they're that amazing anymore. But nonetheless, if you were to go about that process, you would essentially force yourself into situations where you wouldn't do quite so well, or you have less of a chance, or you have less control, right? So I have less control and less of a chance to beat you when you start mounted on top of me. I have less control and less of a chance to beat you when you start in a fully locked armbar with my hands locked, right? And as you go throughout this process, it keeps you in check a little bit more, because guess what? I don't care how good you are. You start with people, you know, in a fully locked armbar, like, you're going to get submitted, at least at the beginning of the process, you know, but if you're training with really good people, like, they're going to submit you, you know. But when you start from scratch and you just start every round facing each other in the standing position or on the knees or whatever the case may be, I mean, hell, you guys have probably watched enough jiu-jitsu competition to know, if you want to, you can kind of just avoid doing jiu-jitsu altogether and kind of scramble around the room and just pull out of everything, and you can not get submitted, right? Like, if you care that much about getting submitted, you can probably prevent it. Like, you're going to probably look like a retard, like running away from everything.
Right. Running circles around.
You can do it. You know, once you're submission aware enough, you could basically just stay out of danger the whole roll. And like, you could pat yourself up on the back at the end, like, oh yeah, I didn't get submitted. But like, the question to ask yourself is not, did I get submitted, but did I get better? Am I a better, and I know this is a little cliche also, but like, am I better than the person that I was yesterday? And as cliche as that may seem, it's a real question that you have to ask yourself. And if you're training and the answer to that question is not yes, more often than not, like, there's probably something wrong, right? So that's kind of what drove the maybe cuntiness behind that that quote that you had there.
That's the quotes that work.
I was a little bit ostentatious in my delivery by saying like, take that and, you know, see if you have no ego, because I considered myself, you know, to be pretty damn good at this jiu-jitsu thing. And if I'm getting submitted that often, and I'm, you know, arguably sometimes I'm allowing it and sometimes I'm not, but if that's happening for me, and you're out there and you consider yourself not on the same level as me, and you're not getting submitted every day, well, then there's probably something wrong with your training. You're either not challenging yourself by putting yourself with good enough training partners, or you're not putting yourself in bad enough positions. I remember a story that was told to me about, and who knows how real it is. I have no clue. You never know. You hear all these kinds of things with these crazy athletes. It was a story about Hodger Gracie. And the story is that I think there was a Worlds where Hodger like submitted everybody with like cross collar chokes, so like 12 out of 12 matches, like was submission or something. And that for that Worlds, he was in England, and he only had the best person he had to train with was like a purple belt. And I think he got to train with Braulio like once every other week or something. And that was all he had in preparation for that Worlds. And he went out there and fucking submitted everybody. So the argument and the story, the moral that was supposed to be to that story, I don't know how real the story is. Obviously, I wasn't there. But the moral to that story is supposedly, hey, man, if you dedicate yourself to this enough and you're smart enough about how you're training, even when you're training with shittier people, you can still get the work done. You can still figure out how to challenge yourself well enough. You can handicap yourself. You can do all these things that makes training still challenging enough that when you go out there, you succeed, right?
I think the thing you're pointing at, right, is if you have a goal every day, you need to work towards whatever that goal is, right? You know, no matter what it is, to get better, to be the best in the world, you got to just work at growing and getting a little bit better at that goal every single day.
Yeah. But the thing is we get caught up in the other stuff, right? That's the struggle is like, that's everybody's fucking goal, right? Like, let's be real. Like, for the most part, if you're doing this, like, you want to get better. Like, that's what we all are thinking in our head. But we get in our own way sometimes, because there's other things that are important to us too. And we let those things, whether it be consciously or unconsciously, supersede that idea of growth. And we go, yeah, I want to grow. Yeah, I want to get better. But shit, this guy's about to break my arm and I'm not going to let him. You know, I don't want to take the chance on trying to do a late escape because then he might tap me. Instead, I'm going to lock my hands as tight as I possibly can. I'm going to wait it out for the rest of the 2 minutes of this round. It's like, did you get better? Like, did that make you better by making that decision?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's it. That brings up the whole thing you're talking about with evolution. And this is I want to bring up this last topic before we get to the review my role. But I mean, for me specifically, you know, we weren't even allowed to learn anything but the basic straight ankle lock until we were brown belts, because that's when it was legal in IBJJF, right?
Same for me. Same for me, by the way. Yeah. I was in the same boat because I didn't even get to Danaher until brown belt, I don't think. So, and even when I did for a little while, the leg locks wasn't even on the menu.
Yeah, exactly. So and then coming through and then, you know, getting black belt, opening up my academy and, you know, becoming really good friends with Rich Byrne, and in walks Rich Byrne with Eddie Cummings. And and I mean, you know, Eddie would spend weeks with us every year because he would be out in the Hamptons. And when I tell you that, you know, we come from a very old school upbringing, and it was just on, man, because like, you know, Eddie comes in and like you mentioned, he is like just goes balls to the wall, but to the effect of like, you're talking about old school guys that only go 100%. And here comes Eddie. And then everybody is thinking that, oh man, you know, watch your legs, which granted he got you with legs, but most of the shit he got you with wasn't with legs because you're thinking
watch
legs.
Everything, buddy.
So, I mean, us old school guys, I mean, multiple black belts in there, just, I mean, tapped multiple times. But I think not only the fact that, you know, it was with the legs that we knew nothing about, specifically, you know, all the ashis, all the entanglements, all the heel hook stuff, but just the systematized way of you guys at the Danaher squad, how everything connected together was just unbelievable to see in an environment at my academy when it was like challenge matches going on. You know what I mean? But that's kind of, can you talk about that a little bit? Because I don't think people realize coming up the way that, I mean, you and I did, and it was very no idea, nothing systematized at all about the legs, even frowned upon.
Yeah. So, all right, first thing, funny story about Eddie. That attests to what you were talking about, and I think this will resonate with you. So we all go, me, Gordon, Eddie, and I think one of his he had like a friend or student of his or something at the time. So we all go to this Dean Lister seminar, okay? And John, you know, we tell John about it. It's like, hey, like Dean Lister's going to show up in Ohio. You know, we figure that's pretty close. We're going to go out there, just see what's up, you know, see if he has any interesting ideas to add or anything like that, right? Prior to that, like, I don't really think I really studied Dean that much. I had seen videos. I knew he was a very dominant force in grappling, like obviously, especially with leg locks and stuff. So it made sense. I'm like, you know, that we're doing this whole leg lock project. Let's see, you know, what this guy has to offer, you know. It ended up being really fucking weird. First of all, obviously because it's Dean, but I mean, I enjoy that personality personally. But but it was weird in the sense that the people that hired him to teach the seminar hired him to teach mainly gi legal leg locks. So like the seminar was not really on what we were looking to learn about at all. And we didn't know that until we got there. Like we found out like when we got there, like, hey, this is going to be in the gi. Eddie had to tie a belt for the first time in like a few years. And like, he couldn't figure out how to tie his belt. It was fucking hilarious. But anyway, so Eddie afterwards, I think like it was either after the seminar or maybe we did some training session with him like the next day. Eddie's training with this guy. And afterwards, the guy like trains with me, or maybe he's talking to me or something. And he goes, hey, what's the name of that armbar specialist that you guys are working with? And I'm like, what do you mean? What armbar specialist? And he points at Eddie. And I was like, oh yeah. Well, I wouldn't necessarily call him an armbar specialist, but yeah, his name's Eddie Cummings, whatever. And he actually asked me, this was really funny. I fucked with the guy. So he goes, he goes, you know, what's his background? Like, did he do like any other martial arts, whatever? It's like, yeah, I think he did like Chilean Sambo for like 5 years. I just like made up like a random martial art. But it just goes to show you, like, so Eddie, like, I don't even think the guy knew who Eddie was at the time. I don't think Eddie had any, at that point in time, had any professional matches where people would know his name yet. So he probably didn't know who Eddie was. But so he didn't even know to be afraid of leg locks. But dude, if you offer up your upper body to Eddie and you keep your lower body away, he will absolutely break your arms. Like, it's just, he's good, dude. Like, he's good and very well rounded in many different areas. So anyway, I just found it ironic that somebody that we all look at, and I mean, you've had experience with Eddie as a leg lock expert. We all look at as a leg lock expert with somebody who literally didn't know who he was, thought he was an armbar expert because he got armbarred so many fucking times in training by Eddie, you know? So anyway, I just wanted to put that story in there to that's what you were talking about.
That's like spot on. I mean, that's it's exactly that was, you know, similar to my experience, but it was going back to that was, I mean, just to me, and this may be a stretch, you tell me what you think, but to me, the systematized way of how everything was done with the legs that you guys do, specifically, you know, heel hooks and entries and all that. I feel like if people don't even at least experience that and at least learn the basics of it, it's similar to a karate guy fighting Hoist Gracie in 1993. Because those guys, you know, didn't even really know an armbar, and people were thinking we were crazy to teach chokes and armbars to kids in jiu-jitsu. And now the same people that were teaching, you know, armbars and chokes to kids in the 90s and, you know, pioneering and the Gracies and all that, they're the same people that's saying these leg locks are so dangerous. And I'm like, listen, it's not that way. And I just think people are just way off when it comes to the opinions of leg locks.
Yeah,
well, I think it's like anything in rule sets too, right? People are going to try to keep a rule set to what they feel is going to be good for them versus, do you know what I mean? Having a broader, they're trying to justify it. Yeah.
Sure. I definitely think that's gotten a little bit more smooth over throughout the years. Like, but there was heavy resistance, like, for a long time, basically, like, not even just suggesting that like leg locks were like bullshit, but like that, like everything we were doing was bullshit. Like that, I mean, for real, like there was like this, I remember one time getting into like an argument with Salo Ribeiro, I think, online. And he like tried to pretend he didn't even know who John was. And I'm pretty sure like John, I don't know. I don't want to get too into the drama of it all, but he was like, oh yeah, like, oh, who's this guy? Whatever. He's never competed. It was an argument about jumping guard. And I think John had said something like it's dangerous, and Salo he's like, oh, well, you never competed, whatever. But he like pretended like he didn't even know who John was. I think he pretended, let's say.
That argument's valid though. So guard jumping is way more dangerous than a heel hook, in my opinion.
Fucking insane. It's very dangerous. And it's the fact that it's taught in like basic classes around the world in certain places is fucking crazy to me. I've literally walked in, I'm not going to say where because I don't want to call people out, but I literally walked in on classes like total basic brand new students just jumping on each other's hips. Like, dude, I get new students that have little to no muscle control, that like have never done sports before. And you got these retards trying to jump on each other. Like at any point in time, they miss and they fall on somebody's knee. Like we're talking catastrophic injury. But anyway, aside from the point that I was trying to make there is that like people wouldn't just talk shit about leg locks. They would just talk shit. Like you're talking about the systems approach and everything like that. They talk shit about the systems approach. I think to this day, Robert Drysdale gets into conversations with Gordon and like,
I've seen those.
It's not even conversations with Gordon. I think he doesn't even address him anymore. I think he just like, he basically like passively aggressively attacks what we're doing. And he'll be like, yeah, system is just a word. And like, it's really no different than anything else that's been. It's like, okay, man, like, is it not obvious and clear? Like, if you look at jiu-jitsu since we've had an impact on it, and you look at jiu-jitsu prior to that, there's clear differences, man.
Clear.
Like, how often do you even remember seeing somebody do a fucking back triangle prior to us starting to do, like, for real though? Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I don't do them that often in competition. It's not like a huge thing for me. But once we kind of came out with like, hey man, like when you're on the back, like you can trap an arm and like here's the back triangle and all this stuff. Like, dude, all of a sudden, everybody in the fucking jiu-jitsu world is doing it. And you're going to deny the impact that we had. Like, it's just so crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But now
Everybody with the back and, the arm traps, trying to do body triangles. And why were people not doing body triangles? Because they weren't given points for that in the traditional.
Yes. That was crazy. That's still crazy to this day that they don't give points for a fucking body triangle in IBJJF. I would love to sit down with somebody and have them explain to me why the fuck the case that would ever be. Here's this more controlling position than this other position. We're just not going to give you any score for it. Fuck yourself.
Yeah. I mean, sub only. I think sub only opened up a lot of people's eyes, because even in your game is insanely scramble based and it's amazing. But when people do wind up passing or mounting, it's like, I don't give a shit, because the points aren't going to matter in that situation. I even go so far as to say, as like, if in a point tournament you get a mount on somebody, but then that guy gets back to half guard or guard, you don't deserve those 4 points.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's kind of exposed the underdeveloped nature of a lot of people's jiu-jitsu, in that I was kind of explaining to you before, like, if you want to, and we've all seen this happen in matches before, you can basically just avoid doing jiu-jitsu for whatever period of time you want to. So kind of like what you would see a lot of the good guys doing is in these bigger tournaments, worlds or like an ADCC or whatever, avoiding at all costs being in a situation where any points could be scored, and then like kind of trying to like win in the last little bit of the match, right? So like the only amount of time that we're doing any amount of work is like when points are on, or when I absolutely feel like I have something, or whatever the case may be. And then once I do have something, I'm going to start stalling again and try to make sure that nothing else can happen. And like, while that can happen in a sub-only match, and you do see it sometimes, especially now that we have sub-only environments where there is not just a decision, but there is a overtime period, right? So we have that EBI format. So one of the downsides to the EBI format is well, you could hope that you're going to beat somebody in overtime, right? So, I mean, you could basically run away from somebody for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, however long it is, and then wait it out, and then hope that you're going to win in this overtime scenario. Now, I mean, you better be pretty good at escaping the back or armbar position, though, if you're planning on doing that. But nonetheless, you can kind of game the system, and that's what people kind of did for years. And I definitely think I would agree with you that in general, sub only started to chip away at that type of strategy. And the other thing I'll say chipped away at that type of strategy, and this I think is even more important, is the professional nature of the jiu-jitsu revolution, as opposed to the amateur nature of competition prior to that, where people weren't getting paid. So in the professional world of sports, okay, there's more than just the element of winning. In amateur competition, all that matters is winning. Winning is the only thing that matters. It does not matter how exciting you are, because guess what? You're not fucking getting paid. No, so it doesn't matter. Nobody cares. You could be as boring as you want to. You could win by advantage and have the sloppiest, shittiest jiu-jitsu anybody's ever seen, and it does not matter. It really doesn't. All that matters is who has the gold medal around their neck, right? Like, ultimately. But when it comes to professional jiu-jitsu, it doesn't work like that, because if you're boring as shit, you're not going to get hired for shows, or people are not going to pay you as much money. So that's another thing that was a big kick in the nuts to kind of the stally, fucking not do anything type of jiu-jitsu, where there was a bunch of holes where in their jiu-jitsu, that was a big kick in the nuts to that, because now you're finding that, oh, wait, if I'm like a stalling piece of shit, nobody wants to see me grapple. Nobody wants to pay me money to get out there on a stage and do this thing that I like to do, right? So that's another piece of the puzzle that I think changed things, is not just the rule set, because you could make an amateur competition sub only and you'd probably get a lot more stalling action and stuff like that. But the professional nature of things, where it's like, oh shit, people are watching, people paid to watch, more people will pay to watch if this match actually is exciting and means something. It'll add to my highlight reel or whatever the case may be, and all of these things. It'll help me build my brand by having an exciting match and this, that, and the other thing. So the professional nature of the sport, I think, has done a lot for the sport also, in terms of making it a bit more exciting and presentable,
Yeah, nobody wants to see anybody pull out of Ashi for 10 minutes.
Right. Yeah. And I also think it changed the landscape of how athletes can make money, right? So they can make money during tournaments, right? Because they are exciting. People want to pay for it. They can make money, doing online teaching. Do you know what I mean? Or classes, and it opened it up. When you have more exciting athletes, you want other things from them, not, just flat.
That's a piece of it too. And I think even that is affected by how entertaining you might be as you're out there. Like, there's guys, and again, I'm gonna intentionally try not to throw names out there, but there's guys that have beaten me in competition or, just do very well in competition in general, right? But just have really fucking boring jiu-jitsu that nobody really wants to learn what you're doing, dude. Like nobody cares. Like, like they just don't. Like there's nothing, because there's nothing to it really. It's like, imagine you came out with a video about how to just dance around somebody for 10 minutes. You know what I mean? And then like hope that you touch their ankle when they pull guard or something. Like it would be the craziest thing. Nobody would pay for that. Nobody's watching.
The whole technique is when they jump guard, touch their ankle, push them down.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think Craig Jones even did like a little spoof video on that once.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. So that's the deal, man. So it's changed everything in very good ways. And naturally, because there's been great change, there's been great resistance to change, like you were mentioning before. Yep. And there's a lot of pushback.
There's still a lot of pushback currently to this day.
I understand. I get it. I definitely get it. But the thing is now is there's so much momentum. It's like impossible to stop. So anybody that's trying to push back, like you're just going to get run over by the boulder. So
yeah. So on that aspect, where do you think it's going, man? Professional sub only all the way, or what?
Yeah, so far that's what it seems like. The tough part about the gi, I know you didn't really necessarily ask this, but it's kind of headed the direction of sub only style. There's obviously variations in the rules, and then it's without the gi, right? And I think the big issue with the gi is not that it can't be exciting, but literally just by having the gi there, you have already made it so that there's a chance, and it's a pretty big chance, that the action is going to get slowed down at some point, right? So like, what do people find exciting? At the bare minimum, like let's say you know nothing about jiu-jitsu, right? You knew zero, you don't know the rules, you don't even fucking understand submissions, whatever. You wouldn't be excited by anything else but movement. Mm-hmm. That's what you would be excited
by. Good point.
You'd see change in position or some sort of movement, and you'd be like, oh yeah, wow, something's happening, right? Something's happening. I shouldn't just say movement, because like two guys could circle around each other and that's technically movement. But I guess I should say change in position, change in something. And that's what they would be like, oh, okay, there's something happening here, right? Even to somebody who literally knows nothing. Mm-hmm. In gi jiu-jitsu, while it is still possible to change position, there's a lot of really cool things that you can do. Unfortunately, by the very nature of the fact that I can hold on to your clothing, everything just slowed down a little bit for the most part. Yep. Unless you got two guys that are basically just going to not ever touch the gi, which would be kind of silly, because why wouldn't you?
Right. Well, it's so funny you mentioned that, because you talk to a lot of gi-based competitors or gi-based athletes, and all of a sudden they do no gi, and those, oh, it's such a difference. The speed game, right? Because exactly to your point, it's nonstop moving. There's no stalling. There's no grips like that, in terms of grabbing the gi and holding it in place, so it's much.
Yeah. So that's why I think we struggle to create a professional environment for gi jiu-jitsu. It is happening a little bit. There are some tournaments. Do I think it's going to completely die? No. Gi jiu-jitsu will still be there, especially because of amateur level competition, and especially because of the general traditional aspect of it. But it'll continue to be buried by no gi jiu-jitsu, and I don't think it's ever going to be on the same level. I just don't think so. Judo is a little different because there's explosive activity happening all the time, and they have a rule set that makes it so that action has to be happening all the time. So judo is still viewed as somewhat as an exciting sport, and it's still it's something that's a big thing. But jiu-jitsu, it's different. Like there's not a lot of. Jiu-jitsu doesn't do a really great job of stopping stalling with rules. Mm-hmm. They don't do a really good job. And I'm not even necessarily saying that would be a great thing if they did try to do that, who knows? You know, I remember a tournament that Gordon did with those guys. What the hell? It was Quintet maybe. And they went so far as to do, they went so far as to give stalling calls, even if somebody was mounting somebody, right? So you're on top and you're mounting somebody, but because you're not doing anything yet, you're getting stalling calls. And, you know, Gordon's like, oh, this is ridiculous. And I was like, well, Gordon, you know, interestingly enough, I actually think they have something here in terms of entertainment, right? Like when you're sitting there in the mount, yeah, you know, you're slowly like maybe trying to incrementally work your position or whatever the case may be. But the average person that watches in the audience that doesn't really know fully what's happening here, they just see you two staying in the same position. Like think about it this way. When in the UFC, okay, somebody will get on someone's back, the worst position you could be in jiu-jitsu, ready to try to strangle somebody, and the crowd fucking boos. Okay? The crowd boos because they just don't get it. They just see one dude holding on to another dude, and that's it. And it becomes boring, even though that to essentially climbing on somebody's back, at least if you're proficient at strangling somebody, that's kind of like you just threw a punch that wobbled somebody. Right? Like you're that close to potentially ending this fight. But it just doesn't matter to the audience. So in terms of the professional world, like if we had a rule set where you're penalized, you know, for staying in the same position for too long, even if it was a dominant one, I mean, that'd be pretty scary to most jiu-jitsu competitors too. I mean, the idea that, oh man, I did all this work to get to mount and now I'm going to get penalized because I'm not moving and I'm not doing anything from mount. Right? So I don't know. I don't even know if that would be a good thing if we had more aggressive stalling calls. It's hard for me to say, but all I know is that it doesn't exist. You know, it's not something that we really do in our sport.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you know, gi jiu-jitsu is definitely not going to be as, you know, popular as no gi or grappling. I mean, even myself, when I train with the gi on, I pretend I'm doing no gi. I have a much better experience rolling. I'm quicker. I'm in and out of positions quicker. I'm not depending on collar sleeve all the time. And then, hey, if I'm on somebody's back and the collar opens up, boom, I'll grab it. But I'm not going to depend on it. And my fingers love me for doing that method.
Yeah, sure.
So, but actually, we have Brian. Do we have that video?
Yeah, we do. We have a video.
Yeah. So, Garry, we have this video, and this was a really big point for me in competition because we're going to review this. I want to have you review this role, kind of get your opinions on on this match. But this for me was a really great experience because when I rolled against somebody that moves like this, it really opened my game up and opened my eyes up. So let's take a look.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys can see my screen?
I can. Nothing's happening yet, but I see the screen.
All right. So this is Garry Tonon at brown belt. All right. This is Garry Tonon at brown belt versus myself at brown belt. And we met up in an open weight at a Long Island Pride tournament. And you came down from lightweight, I think, and I came up from feather. There was nobody in the divisions or something, and it was just a absolute match. So, but yeah, the guy I'm fighting is just an absolute scramble beast. But I think the guy in your corner is Almeida in this.
It might be. I can't really see the corners.
Yeah, I think it'll pan over there in a little bit. But
did he have hair then? Did Almeida have hair?
There he is. He's wearing a hat.
Yeah, I see. I think I see him. I think you're right.
I do a jumping guillotine, right? And I am just latching on. And I am like, oh man, I just got to hold on to this.
So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I literally spend all my energy on this guillotine. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say at the time, I was just a half guard guy. So one of the things I would do is if anybody Kimura or guillotine me, I would always try to look to find a way to get to their back from that position. So let's see if that's what I try to do. Kind of. I rocked back and forth and we just kind of worked our way out. But yeah, I mean, I definitely like submission defense was a really big deal for me. So, and being in half guard, I got people would just guillotine me a shit ton from there. So I got pretty comfortable dealing with the submission threat. It looked like a pretty good guillotine to me. I mean, it's hard to see. It's a little far away, but.
I mean, that was part of your, I mean, I never fought somebody up until that point that, I mean, just, you know, let you latch on, not let you, but I get, you know, submissions on and I'm just spending all the energy and you just get out and you're conserving energy. And as time goes on, the guy that's getting submissions on you just tires out.
Yeah.
Now you're doing a little head tap. You're doing some wrestling there, man.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my wrestling was a little more rudimentary back then, so I kind of like had to just like poke people in the head, and then I had like an arm drag. I had
There
this
you go.
thing where I would kind of poke you in the head, and then I'd reach for I'd use that to distract you, and then I'd reach for the inside hamstring to get like a high crotch. And that was like one of my only moves back then.
Yeah.
And I wasn't as good. I had a little wrestling like experience, but
Was this pre-John or was this?
yeah, for sure.
Wow.
So a little double there.
Yeah.
But
But
yeah, this is probably if I was training with John at all, like I said, it would have been like maybe tops once a week at that Monday afternoon class, more than likely. Because at the brown belt level, yeah, I wasn't really exposed to him all that much.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, this is 2011 brown belt. Now, if this was, because this is a traditional IBJJF style tournament, if this was nowadays, there would be heel hooks legal, you know?
Yeah.
But I mean, even so, you would pretty much still say.
I probably didn't even know how to do one at this point.
Yeah, so I think most people, people really need to know that. Like, I didn't even start getting into the heel game until after black belt, but you didn't even get started into that until well into brown belt.
Well, actually, look in the corner too. There's a guy with a gi. There's gis going back and forth too. So this is a gi no gi tournament at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. So even top position half guard, you preferred during this time?
Yeah, half guard was big for me. It was just like a big part of my game, top, bottom, whatever the case may be. I mean, that was kind of my whole game back then. So I had my own little system, right? You know, I hadn't been exposed to John yet, but my idea was, hey man, like, the back seems to be the best way to submit somebody. So I'm going to spend all my time. See,
nice.
there it is right there. I tried to find a way.
That was the Berimbolo era.
Yeah.
I think you had fought Gianni in this same tournament in the gi and before we did this open weight match. But yeah, that was like the whole Berimbolo scene coming on.
So I would always use like cross body ride to try to do my rolls to the back, which was what I think I tried to do from that half guard situation.
Yep.
I'm probably going to try to do it here off the legs. I used to do it off a stack pass. So I guess not. A little bit, but that was kind of my thing. Is like, hey, what ways can I expose the back? So that's what I thought about the whole match, and the best ways that I figured out to do that in my career at that point in time were pretty much through half guard variations.
Nice,
and
right
like, if I know,
this is one of my favorite transitions. You got to check this out. Watch, it's kind of like a monoplata going for omoplata, and then I roll through, come out, you shoot right in. Nice transition, right? But that's what I mean. That was exciting.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement. Yeah, it's a great match.
You know, like I think people want to see that way more than, slow movement, like you said,
For sure. And you know what's funny is my coaches would always criticize me for not just like getting positions and keeping them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Garry, why did you have to win fucking 12-10? Like, instead of fucking just winning by fucking your first sweep. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I wasn't done. Like, I wanted to keep grappling, man. Like, I don't want to just hang out.
But you obviously, even before John, now your whole game was scrambling. When did you start getting into that?
It's like like we were kind of talking about with the gi no gi. Like, I quickly found out that my mentality was better suited to no gi, and probably partly for that reason, I excelled in situations where I could generate movement.
Oh, check this out. Watch this.
I try to do that.
Do that. Now watch. I bridge out and I try to attempt an arm bar. I mean, this is what I love. Transition.
Yeah, damn.
Look, you tried that transition.
Oh, you missed his head.
Yeah.
You missed his head. That's what happened.
Sloppy arm bar attempt.
Yeah.
Man. Hey, go back to that for a second, Brian. That was like the side control Americana, right? Side control Pila.
Yeah, I was trying to hit my legs American.
Yeah. So over here.
Yeah, right there. Oh, that was on, man.
So look, and he's cranking your elbow. You see what he's doing?
Yeah.
Like, look
I thought I was gonna have that for sure, and then he just bridged out. Yeah.
Then now I'm like, all right, well, I just got to get my head out.
Then the arm was exposed for sure. But yeah, the legs never made it across the face, I think.
Yeah. And your style, man, is like, hey, give the arm, and then there's the hitchhiker, right? I mean, shit.
Back then, I'm going to tell you this for real. I felt so strongly about my ability to defend arm bars, and I told John this too. I thought that arm bars were fake. Mm-hmm. Like, I actually genuinely didn't believe that like arm bars were really like a real move. Like in my eyes, I was like, if you get caught in an arm bar, like you just suck at armbar defense. Was the way that I looked at it.
Triangle.
And now I definitely disagree with that. Like I train with guys that can absolutely submit me at the arm bars, but like, yeah, that's just how I felt. I felt so strongly that like I could find a way to get out of pretty much any arm.
That's awesome, man. Well, I just wanted to, I thought that was really cool to bring up because that was like, that opened my mind up to like the whole, just like the idea of scrambling and just, you know, giving certain positions to get other positions, you know, up until that point, it was just, you know, just go hard and tournament style every time. And you're just trying to like gut it out. But the tactics of, you know, not only your game, but that whole just keeping momentum going, you know,
like take that legs American lock that I went for as an example, right? There's nothing that made me go for that. Like I didn't have to do that. I could have just stayed in side control. Like I'm assuming up until that point, I was winning by points already. I think I could be wrong, but it looked like it based on the exchanges. I guarantee you after that match, Ricardo was pissed that I fucking went for a submission from there instead of just maintaining the position. And that's the way that we thought back then, you know, that's so it's kind of like, man, like, all right, you're up by 4 points or 2 points or whatever the case may be, just maintain your position, just stay in side control. Yeah. And like, that was it. And like, dude, it just wasn't enough for me. Like, I was like, no, dude, like we're like, isn't the point to submit the guy? Like, let's do that. I just want, like, I don't know. My brain never really shuts off. It's so hard for me to just be like, oh, we're just going to stop here.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, it's interesting you bring that up because that's the point of jiu-jitsu, right? Is to submit the person, not to, you know, stall and win by points. It's to beat your opponent. Tom,
Ricardo, everybody forever would criticize me. I think like the first time Tom ever said like, good job. Like he said like a genuine good job without like a high level of criticism. I had won like brown belt, like Pan Ams or Worlds. And I think I like submitted everybody and like didn't get a point scored on me or something. And he's like, yeah, you competed well today. And that was like the first time I ever got him to be like, just to give me that kind of positivity. Every other time it was like, Garry, like you won, but you're a fucking idiot. Like you won, but like you could have like won so much easier if you didn't do this, and this, and let this person score and like do this. And I got criticized for that shit for my whole career. So, I mean, hey, if you're out there and you're competing and that's how, and that's, and people are telling you suck, even though you might be winning and by submission or whatever, there's hope for you yet, my friends.
Awesome, man. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Where can everybody find you online? Obviously, Garry Tonon on Instagram, right? That's your main. So
my name has 2 R's in it, as most people can't figure out, and my last name is Tonon. In case you're wondering how to spell that, most people struggle with one or both of those things. But yeah, I'm on most social media. I don't really screw with TikTok that much, but I am on there. But other than that, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
You don't got you don't have an OnlyFans like Craig?
I do not have an OnlyFans yet. And I mean, apparently it's getting shut down. So we're gonna have to, if I'm going to do it, I got to move to another platform. So I was thinking of starting BJ Fanatics instead of BJJ Fanatics, but
there you go.
No,
it's a whole other industry.
So yeah, man. I mean, other than that, I do a podcast called Flesh Wound Podcast with my buddy Chris Algieri, who's a professional boxer. He just fought recently and won. And one of my sponsors from Chimera Coffee, Frankie. And so we do that. We don't do it probably as often as you guys do because we're degenerates. So we probably only put out one episode every 2 weeks or something. Who knows? Probably even less than that these days. But yeah, we do that. I got a company called Cash Chicks Championships. It's my apparel company. I've been partnering up recently with Skilled Violence. So they've been selling some of my stuff. So if you want to see some of my stuff, you could head over there. I'm also repping, like I said, Skilled Violence. So any of their stuff is good, you know. What else? I started working with a company called MMA Coin. It's like a cryptocurrency.
Yep, I've heard of that.
Which is cool. So I'm excited to get involved in that. They want to do some NFT stuff with me too. So, you know, I have some of my own little crypto investments, and you know, I know it's, you know, developing all these different cryptocurrencies is kind of like a big thing today. So, you know, hell, you know, getting involved with one that's martial arts based is really cool. I know that they've given back some of the money to children's charities and stuff too, so that's great.
What else we got going on? Anything? I'm trying to think.
Yeah, anybody interested in the MMA coin, by the way, shout out there. That's on the Rocket Bunny ecosystem.
Okay, yeah, that's true. I think they told me they're available on Pancake Swap and 100X altcoin or something like that. My own school. I have a jiu-jitsu school and an affiliation in New Jersey. I have 3 schools in the affiliate. 4 schools, including my own in the affiliation. That's Garry Tonon Jiu Jitsu is the home base. I probably get there like once a month to teach, but my buddy Chris Seidbanow is one of my brown belts. Teaches full time there. He's amazing. He's very, very good. Basically, anytime he's ever competed, he gets a highlight reel finish, then ends up getting injured for 6 months, and we don't get to see from him. So he's got a little knee injury right now, but he's great. He's a really great teacher. Harbor Jiu Jitsu down in, I want to say Egg Harbor Township. I could be wrong. It's a little confusing down there. There's like Egg Harbor Township, Little Egg Harbor Township. So I don't know exactly which one it is, but Harbor Jiu Jitsu is the name of the school. Al Bruce runs that school. He's been really great with me throughout the years. We got another school out in, I want to say it's Middlesex, not the county, but the actual city. And that's called All In Jiu Jitsu. I got 2 friends running that school, Damian Anderson, who's my teammate, and Andrew, who run that school. They've been running for a few years now, I think, maybe 2. They moved to a bigger spot, so they've been doing pretty good. I've been really excited. I taught a seminar there the last time I was in town. All In Jiu Jitsu if you're around Middlesex. My school, by the way, sorry, I failed to mention, is located in North Brunswick, New Jersey. And then my last affiliate is Immortals Jiu Jitsu. And I want to say it's up north for sure. I'm trying to remember. I never remember the city that it's in. It's slipping my mind. But anyway, Immortals Jiu Jitsu, if you're living in North Jersey, that's my other affiliate. And Mike Rockshon and Sean Yardimarco run that school. And they've been doing really well as well.
But we'd love to have you back on, man. We're going to be doing a lot of different roundtable stuff, and you brought up all of your affiliations and academies. That's one of the, I think, next big topics that we want to go through, because not a lot of people talk about it. Not only just running an academy, but affiliations and how they should be. Not all operate. Everything's different. Every location's different, but generally how jiu-jitsu is going to grow via, affiliations and academies, because there's a lot of academies out there. They want to have affiliations, but they want all their affiliations to run the business exactly how they do. And it's got to be a cookie cutter thing. And then there's other affiliations where they let the business run how they want to. And I think that's the way that it should be, So,
sure.
Yeah, and you're definitely going to have to come back on when you guys open up your school in Austin, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited about that. That's going to be big stuff, man.
Yeah, we're going to be keeping an eye on that. And you're fighting in MMA coming up too, or hopefully?
Yeah. So should be before the end of the year. Hopefully we're seeing a title, a title fight between me and Martin. I almost said Martin Nguyen. That was the old title holder. Between me and Thon Lee, hopefully before the end of the year. Can't make any guarantees. No contracts are signed. So if it doesn't happen, it's probably not my fault. Probably something else is going on. We've been both waiting for each other with little injuries here and there. So I'm thinking that we're going to make it happen by the end of the year, though. I'm super excited for that. It's a really big opportunity for me.
Awesome. Yeah, Garry, stick around for a minute after we log off here. But guys, make sure you like, subscribe, share. Make sure you keep sending us your rolling videos. Remember, here at Jiu-Jitsu Motivation, we have the reviewmyroll.com. You guys can submit your rolls to us. We will have a black belt review them, send it back. We will even have certain guys that have been on our shows be able to review your rolls. So keep getting right on our website. Make sure you guys sign up for the newsletter and keep sending us those videos, guys. All right. We'll see you next time.